Hey bestie, welcome back to Friend Crush. I don't know if I like the term bestie or if I like the term cutie better. Hey cutie. Anyway, welcome back to Friend Crush. I'm Amber Killer. This is my podcast where I talk about stuff and things. And today we're talking about racism, part 1. So, last week on my Instagram story, I was asking questions about racism and have you seen people unlearn racism? Do you have internalized racism? How have you facilitated the unlearning of racism, whether with yourself or with other people? And yeah, I just wanted to share the information that I received. Thank you to anybody that did participate in a poll or sent me a really thoughtful response. I'm loving the nuance that I'm seeing. It's unlike anything I experienced when I was younger. This would have not have been possible for me back then, I don't think. I have everything in a keynote, just so you know. And obviously I exist in like a digital echo chamber. I see a lot of similarities in the responses that I received with like my own perspective, but I also recognize that outside of the digital echo chamber that I exist in, there is a bigger digital and IRL world that exists, and not everybody is thinking with the amount of nuance that I have received in these answers. When I asked, have you ever seen a white person unlearn racism? Looking back on this question, I can acknowledge that it lacked a bit of nuance. Like, what does unlearn really mean? I think unlearning, again, is also a spectrum in the same way that racism is a spectrum too. So I didn't mean like, have you ever seen a white person unlearn every racial bias they've ever received and just exist in this like colorblind state? No. But have you ever seen a white person unlearn even just a little bit of racism, expand their awareness beyond the default setting that they came to you with? I think for every poll, there was about 200 to 300 people that responded. And I made this a yes or no question. And I received a 35% yes and a 65% no for if you've ever seen a white person unlearn racism. When I think about my own personal experience, again, it is like on a spectrum. Some people have really doubled down on their view of the world, of race, of their position, and other people have grown and expanded their awareness over time, so it does depend. Then I asked, how have you managed to facilitate someone unlearning racism? What did you say? What did you reference? How did you approach it? So a lot of the answers talk about having like a friendly conversation with people, not attacking them personally, but trying to facilitate them questioning the, racially charged comments or behavior that they've made. And then providing factual evidence and then proof of hypothetical situations that they can't necessarily experience. I think it's an ongoing process, and sometimes you have to leave them to their own devices. Like any lasting change, the shift has to come from within. You can only say it's fucked and hope they eventually see why it was as well, and hope that they take the time to research and continue to unlearn in their own time. And then a lot of people just saying, fuck that shit, it's too hard. So yeah, someone also said, friendly conversation, examples that they can relate to only works with people that I'm dating, and I don't have any patience for other people. From my observations of white people that have unlearnt racism or become more racially aware, a lot of them has been through either like close friendships with someone like me or from dating people of color. So I can think of like a few girlfriends that I have that dated men of color and became more aware of racism in society, but then also the internalized racism of their partners. I can also think of times when I've been entangled with a white person and been able to facilitate a little bit of awakening for them, provide a bit more perspective. And I think that is really important. Like if you grew up around just white people, which is a lot of the white people that I know. Like, I would have been one of few people of color that they would engage with. You're not really given many opportunities to question any of your internalized biases. Only when you come up against another person of color and you say or do something or think something racist can you then sort of like interrogate where those assumptions would come from. It was really hard for me to experience racism at the hands of people that I considered friends and try to explain to them why what they said was hurtful or offensive, and then have them not understand why that was the case because there was nobody else around to validate my experience or my point of view. So that was really isolating at the time, but it really gave me perspective on how proximity to people of color or any marginalized group is important for people to understand these issues, because everybody is living in their own reality. Everyone has their own set of problems that they have to deal with in life, regardless of their gender or their race. Obviously, you face additional barriers because of your race and gender at times, but I think it takes that closeness for people to really question the way that they think. And also because racism is kind of rooted in white supremacy, and white supremacy is related to like Christian ideas about good and bad and morality and white people being morally superior to people of color. When I was younger, and I mean, this continues to be true a lot of the time, being called out for your racism or being called racist was considered worse than experiencing racism. So many experiences that I had where I was just minding my own business on my own profile, making a joke about some microaggression I'd experienced, trying to reclaim my experience as a woman of color through satire and humor, as I do. And some white guy has got something to say about it and is like wanting me to tell them that they're not racist in a context where like I'm not talking to you, like, period. You know, if you don't like it, just keep moving. You don't need to respond and have me validate your existence as a white man and whether or not you are or aren't racist. I recognize privilege that I have as an East Asian woman. I continue to try to do the work to expand my awareness, but yeah, I'm not here to like stroke the white man's ego. I don't really care to do that. At one stage, I had so few friends of color, had never even experienced real community with more than one other person of color. Even when I would try to word things in a way that would not come off as a personal attack towards white people, they would still somehow misinterpret what I was saying. And then I realized, you know, sometimes people just can't read or they don't want to, and they're looking to be offended about things that don't even involve them. And that's not my problem. So learned a lot from being a little bit of a brat on the internet. But yeah, I will say that I have seen people unlearn racism, but white people did respond saying that it is an ongoing process of recognizing and building awareness around racially charged thoughts that come up, because we're being conditioned all the time towards different biases, and each person is going to have a different set of things that they're being told based on where they live, their family, their friends, the media they consume, etc., etc. So I think I admire white people that have that awareness to say it's ongoing. I'm trying to make an effort to question the way that those thoughts come up. I didn't see anybody do that when I was younger. So the next thing that I asked was, would you be friends with someone who has said or done racist things? 36% yes, 64% no. Again, like, this question kind of lacks nuance, but I kind of wanted it to be that way because I wanted to see what people's like gut reaction to this question would be, because obviously the issues aren't black and white. From the poll, it seems like no, I would never be friends with someone that's racist. But from the question bubble, the answer bubble, when I said why not, I had a lot more nuance. I'm just living for the nuance, you know. Some of the answers I received: Obviously, it depends on the situation, but in my experience, most were unwilling to unlearn or stop. Okay. Another person said, yes, I would be friends with someone that has been or said, done racist things, because I was once ignorant and I learned from my mistakes, so they can too. Another person said, my white friends think they are not racist and they support change the date, but they can't understand that racial blindness isn't a thing. It's a little too painful for them to unpack. So, ... Another person said, honestly, a lot of my white friends have eventually said racist things. True. We've all said really stupid shit as children and teenagers. Another person said, it's complex. I can't be friends with those who have traumatized me directly, but new people, yes. Another person, I believe I can change their views. Another, I would if the person doesn't do it again. A person can learn from their mistakes. Everyone says semi-racist shit sometimes. I want to see that my friends can admit mistakes and learn. Another person says, to imagine someone who has never said or believed anything wrong is to underestimate the power that systemic oppression has on society through education, work, and the media. And it also denies that growth and progress is possible. I don't have the energy to explain anymore, so bye-bye to that friend instead. You don't have to be racist to say something racist. It's been taught to us since we were born. I wouldn't be friends with anyone that cannot accept or isn't willing to change. Intentional racists can fuck off, but no one is not racist with a level of conditioning in society. If they know what exactly and why it was wrong, and if they've changed and are actively unlearning, then they could be friends. I'd forgive it if it was in their past and we all grow up with prejudice and the context of upbringing. People can learn and change their behavior with perspective and help. True that. Generally, it's a hard no, but if someone genuinely wants to unlearn, I am there for them. It depends on how they behave when I address it and educate them about it. So referring to my 4 stages of realizing things: acknowledgement, anger, acceptance, action. It is really important to have awareness, be able to acknowledge and accept that society is racist and that everybody has their own magical set of internalized racial biases. I don't think that just because you're a person of color or from a marginalized community, you don't have any internalized racism, whether directed at your own ethnicity or towards others. But being able to accept this, acknowledge it, and just be mindful of the way that you communicate and try to expand your awareness is important. And everybody is going to make mistakes on that journey because everybody's reality is going to be different. Every person you speak to is going to have a different experience. The way that someone talks to me about my experience as an Asian woman is going to be different to other Asian women. And I think we do ourselves a disservice when we assume that there is some sort of like universal experience for any marginalized group. Yes, there are a lot of parallels and similarities, but for each individual, there's like different levels of nuance for their experience and how they move through the world. Everybody is at a different stage and everyone is moving at their own pace. And when I am able to accept that and approach situations with that mindset, I find it much easier to connect with other people and to know whether or not it's worth putting any energy into a certain situation. Because when I was younger, I cared a lot about the people that would say and do racist things. And I was so desperate to get them to just expand their awareness so that I could feel like it was safe to be friends with them. And sometimes they would be willing to change and acknowledge and expand their awareness, and other times they just weren't. And I don't think you can change another person if they aren't ready to do that. And it's not a personal failure when you're not able to, because everyone is really responsible for their own journey. If I wasn't able to get a person to just acknowledge that I had had a negative experience, whether as a result of their behavior or like another person that we knew, and I felt like that would diminish my self-worth. And that's not necessarily a conscious thought pattern. It was happening like subconsciously most of the time. And then when I reflect back on it, I can have more awareness of that. So the lesson is, it doesn't matter what other people say or do. Your inherent worth as a person can't be taken away from someone unless you let them. So I used to let people do that to me, but as I've gotten older, I've learned to draw boundaries and be like, that's enough, okay? Bye, Felicia. And some people are naturally good at doing that. I feel like everybody has it within them to do so, but with varying degrees of effort, we learn to draw those kinds of boundaries and expand on our own sense of self-worth without letting other people determine it for us. And I've seen how this plays out through my relationship with my mum. My mum and I are very different but similar. But she has this like natural entitlement and sense of self that I didn't have when I was growing up. And things that are very easy for her to brush off and be like, I don't care what that person thinks, used to be much harder for me to do. Like, it would take more time and effort for me to reach a mental place and then also like an action to unhook from the kinds of racially charged things that people would say and do. And with practice, I've gotten to a point where I'm just like, don't give a fuck. But it's taken me time to do that. And I think when you can recognize that it might take more effort for you to get there, you can then start to figure out how you can get there, how you can train your mind to not just like feel defined by what other people say about you, regardless of what color you are. All of us ping something in other people that makes them want to fight you. When it comes to unlearning and learning, practicing anything, like literally anything, I have realized, accepted that it just takes time and consistent effort. I think capitalism, consumerist culture, and the preying on of like our instant gratification brain parts has given us brainworms, and we kind of subconsciously want things to be like overnight changes. And I mean, something that I definitely suffered from. I don't know about everybody else, but I can think of so many examples of this. Like, I used to obsessively buy new skincare products because I would try to get rid of pimples overnight. I would, start an exercise regime, and after one workout, I'd be like, okay, am I fit now? I would, think of something that I would need to do in order to like better myself and assume that just that one thought alone would completely overhaul my life. But I think growing up is realizing that everything takes time, and you have to constantly put in effort to build awareness around your thoughts and your feelings. And I think understanding that your thoughts and feelings kind of like come from nowhere. Sorry, I meant to say it feels like your thoughts and feelings come from nowhere, but they come from like your body and your subconscious, and building awareness around them as they come up means that you're not going to be reactive, and then you can take a moment to process what you're thinking and how you're feeling before you respond. It's a choice how you respond or express or process those thoughts and feelings. So a lot of people saying that unlearning for them is a process of catching themselves when they have racist thoughts and stopping to think about why they have them so that they can unlearn. Like, that is a really important part of this process. Yeah, acknowledging that we're all being sent different messages that don't necessarily reflect reality because they all serve some kind of agenda that we may or may not benefit from, to be honest, I think being good at something, even if it is unlearning and facilitating other people's unlearning, isn't about how much effort you put in. It's about knowing when to stop putting in effort when you're not getting a return anymore. And some relationships and interactions will be like that. And it's up to you to decide whether or not you want that person in your life or not. Because I don't think it's as easy as like, I used to always see people say shit like, if you go home for Christmas and you don't try to convince your family to boycott Trump, then you're part of the problem too. Sometimes it's not that simple, you know, like especially when you're talking to people the generation above you, they've been living 40, 50 years with these internalized biases. They're not going to be undone with a conversation at dinner. Some people will just mirror what you're saying so that they can avoid conflict, and other people will vehemently deny and double down and be adamant in their position and their entitlement to think the way that they think. Sometimes it just be like that. Like, I don't really know what else to say. But yeah, I don't really think fighting is that productive most of the time. So definitely trying to appeal to someone's humanity, their empathy is important. But some people just don't care, and that's not your problem. It is not a personal failure if you aren't able to compel someone to be a little less racist. You know, like they need to decide that in their own mind as much as you need to help facilitate them. And if you feel like you're not making any progress, then take a step back, you know, go take a nap. You deserve it. Yeah, as I've gotten older, I can definitely appreciate that everybody is just on their own journey. Everyone's at different stages, and you can do what you can to, you know, help and support the people around you or the people you come in contact with. But it's also okay to just set a boundary and be like, you know what, me putting in more effort into this is giving me diminishing returns. It can be really difficult. Like, obviously a lot of this stuff is easier said than done, and I'm able to look back in retrospect with more clarity than I had as I was living through it. So I hope that by sharing all these different perspectives and drawing the parallels between them, you know, we all can just have a little bit more perspective, have a little bit more data, and feel a little less alone in this sometimes very isolating journey. Like, I definitely felt very isolated in my racial awakening when I was younger, geographically, emotionally, spiritually. Like, there just wasn't really anyone around me that I could talk to about these issues. And then I've been really lucky and really blessed to not only see a lot of people that I knew go through their own sort of realizations, but then also meet a lot of people that I was able to connect with based on our experiences, even though they happened in like completely different parts of the world, and to share insight and support each other and grow together, etc., etc. Any wisdom that I can share from my own experiences, I'm always happy to do. And I can acknowledge that maybe my approach doesn't work for everybody, and just let it be that, you know? So anyway, thanks for listening. I'll speak to you soon. Next episode about internalized racism, how people's understanding of racism has changed over time. Thank you. Oh my God, my hair. And I will speak to you soon.